I had an interesting conversation that I want to share with you with my 31-year-old daughter over the weekend. She and her husband have 3 children. They're very active in their church. They now attend a big church in kind of a big city in Iowa and moved there from a smaller church in a smaller town. She was telling me that her husband especially has noticed that oftentimes the sermons have the same kind of themes that they have heard now in both of their Presbyterian churches. And that theme is that we need to change the way we do things. It's obvious in a lot of Presbyterian churches that what we're doing, especially on Sunday morning, is not reaching the numbers of people that could fit in our big sanctuaries like the one I'm in, and can't reach the number of people that we really need to be sharing the good news with. We're not really doing our job very well as a church right now in reaching people to come to worship. So her husband Matt has noticed that the pastor will stand there and preach this great sermon about how we need to change, we need to do things differently. But what he's noticed is the incongruence of what happens, because oftentimes the pastor is standing in a place that looks kind of like this, like a church that has been around for a while, and oftentimes the pastor is wearing something like this, as in both of these cases he is preaching about this. And then oftentimes, right afterwards, the big organ fires up and plays music that was written centuries ago. And so they hear this great sermon about we need to change, and then they see something that shows no change at all. Well, that's happening in a lot of our churches, of course, and there are good reasons for that. A lot of pastors and session members realize that we need to do something different about the way we do worship, about the way we do church in general. But it's also the fact that the people who are present on Sunday morning or in our other worship services, and the people who contribute financially to many of our churches, like things exactly the way they are. They don't want to change. And so we find ourselves in local congregations and as a denomination in this quandary. The people who are already here pretty much like it the way it is. But the people who are out there, our mission field, the people with whom we need to share the good news, are not joining us in the numbers that we could handle. There's this theory about something called triple loop learning. You may have heard me talk about this before. Here's the idea. The first loop of learning is to learn how to do something better. The second loop is to learn how to do that same thing differently. The third loop is to realize that we need to become different people in order to change. So, for instance, watching this YouTube video instead of reading this in the newsletter for the Presbytery this week is kind of double loop learning. If we just wanted to do single loop learning about how I communicate with you every week in the newsletter, I would just brush up my writing skills and make sure that what I write is very excellent. Double loop learning is that a few years ago we decided we would do this in a different way. In other words, that we would use this video opportunity for me to communicate with you. Triple loop learning would be if I continue to work on making myself a different person. If the Presbytery continues to work on making itself different so that we can communicate with our members in the Presbytery in a way that inspires all of us to new action and new ways of doing things. It's not easy work. All of us have been called to be leaders in the church in this time when we really need to think about how to accomplish this change. Because, after all, as the Westminster Divines reminded us, we were put on earth to give glory to God and to enjoy God forever. And it is incumbent upon each one of us to continue to discover new ways to invite other people to fulfill their purpose as well, to join us in worship and to glorify God.